listening to the Pharmacist Answers podcast. I'm Cynthia, the pharmacist, and today you'll get your questions answered and your curiosity cured. I spent a very exciting weekend with some awesome friends in Nashville, and I had some awesome conversations about all kinds of things medical. We had a conversation about the difference between being allergic to a medication or being intolerant to a medication. And this can apply to foods too, because some people find themselves to be intolerant to a food, but they like that food so much that they just kind of suffer through the intolerance or take some other kind of medication or over-the-counter something to help alleviate the discomfort from that intolerance just because they think that food is so yummy. Medicine isn't necessarily yummy, but sometimes the benefit of using that medication to help you get better is worth the short-term intolerance and discomfort that you might suffer. An allergy, especially when it comes to a dangerous, life-threatening allergy, is going to affect your entire body, multiple organ systems, and put you at serious risk of not being here anymore and usually require medical attention. So things that swell up that make you not be able to swallow or breathe, things that affect your heart rate that make it go too fast or go too slow, things that affect your breathing, things that affect your bleeding. Sometimes in anaphylaxis, your blood vessels dilate and your blood just doesn't stay in all the places that it needs to stay, and you end up with a lot of swelling. And so those are things that are dangerous. You can't fix on your own. You need medical attention for those things. Intolerance, on the other hand, are usually things that make you kind of uncomfortable, may be related to normal side effects of that medication, and at no time would I ever tell somebody that if you feel worse than death when you take this, but you're not actually dying, then if you can avoid it, then avoid it or take something different. But other times, the intolerance or that discomfort from side effects is short-lived, and if you can get over the hump, you get all of that maximum benefit. I think I have a list of 8 different symptom categories that can be considered side effects or intolerance versus being classified as a true allergy. And I'm not going to do all 8 today. I'll spread them out this week, but I'm going to do 2 this morning. So we kind of did an overview. Allergy is usually histamine related, along with all the other things that go into an allergic reaction and can be very life-threatening, require you to get emergency attention ASAP. Intolerance is usually a discomfort related to medication side effects and can be tolerated or fixed, at least if it's a short-term treatment that you're needing to do. The first complaint that a lot of people make about medications and why they don't want to take them anymore, lactose. Yeah, lactose, again, you're not allergic to milk, you're more intolerant to it, and your body freaks out and was like, I don't know what's going on. And like I said earlier, there's a difference between a food allergy and a food intolerance. And some food intolerances people decide to push through and just suffer with because they like that food so much. So sometimes medical professionals will ask you to try to push through the intolerance of the medication to get the benefit of it so you can get to the other side and get better. So the number one complaint, people say, oh, I can't take that medicine because I'm allergic to it. And I'm like, really? Why? What kind of reaction did you have to it? And they're like, oh, it made me nauseous. Nausea is a side effect to almost anything that you swallow. Even if you take it 9 out of 10 times and 9 times it doesn't make you nauseous and 1 time it does, that nondescript side effect, just about anything can cause nausea. So that's kind of hard to say if that's really an intolerance or if it's a side effect. So medications that can lead to nausea, at least prescription medications, pain medications, so narcotics, can lead to nausea. Antibiotics can cause nausea. Any type of tablet that is really big and powdery and chalky, and it looks like you would want to give it to an elephant rather than a human, those kinds of pills are typically going to make your stomach, make you feel nauseous, because your stomach gets this really large clumped together thing and has to produce all this acid to try to break it down as best as it can. And so all of that geared up churning for that one thing, as it's starting to disperse that powder, can lead to nausea. Which, going back to big tablets, vitamins are a huge culprit of causing nausea because of that fact, because of just that big giant tablet. So yes, our number one advice of, if you take this on an empty stomach and it makes you nauseous, take it with food. And sometimes if you take it with like 2 little bites of bread and it still makes you nauseous, then maybe you need more food. Sometimes people will recommend that you take medication with milk, so that milk is a base and it counteracts that acid in your stomach to help not lead to so much acid and indigestion feeling. And that's okay. Sometimes there are certain medications, especially certain antibiotics, that you don't want to take with milk, because the calcium in the milk attaches to the medicine coming out of that pill, and then won't let that medicine go to the places in your body that it needs to do its job. So if you're trying to get rid of an infection, but the calcium in your milk soaks it all up and traps it up and won't let it go, then you're not going to get rid of the infection. So we usually don't recommend milk a lot of times because of that reason, but taking it with food, having something really absorbative, which are carbs, bread, crackers, anything that's going to help soak up that extra fluid that your stomach starts to produce, so you don't get that indigestion or nauseous feeling in your stomach. But here's an interesting trick that some drug marketers have figured out. There are certain medications for type 2 diabetes that their number one side effect that like 65% of people complain about when they take it is nausea or indigestion. And I say indigestion, it's just kind of that yucky, bubbly feeling like in your stomach and in your esophagus. And they actually market those drugs, one, because for people who have type 2 diabetes, a lot of times they end up overweight. And their doctor is saying, if you want to help control your diabetes best, you need to lose weight. And they're like, whatever. And they don't do that, but they want to take their medicine anyway. These medicines actually have a side effect of nausea. And for type 2 diabetics who aren't super excited about having to exercise and lose weight, the nausea side effect from those medications end up causing them to lose their appetite, and they don't eat as much, and therefore it's like they end up putting themselves on a diet because they don't want to eat as much because their medication makes them nauseous. If you're like, oh, this makes me nauseous, I don't want to take it anymore. Well, then maybe if you take it and can deal with the nauseous feeling, then it will encourage you not to eat as much and lose weight. And so that's like this weird mind trick. So that's one of the places where that intolerance, where a lot of people would be like, oh, this makes my stomach hurt, I don't want to take it anymore, actually work for the benefit and the health of the person, because if they're not eating as much and many calories, then they're losing weight and getting their body healthy to help control the other diseases or conditions that they might have gotten because they were overweight. So nothing against people who are overweight, but there's a lot of health troubles that come with being overweight. So then the second side effect or intolerance that a lot of people complain about with medications dealing with your stomach is diarrhea. Going back to antibiotics. Antibiotics can cause diarrhea because they not only kill the bad bacteria that's in your body that you don't want there, but the good bacteria that hangs out with you to like fight off all the bad critters get affected by those and can get killed off. And a lot of those bacteria live in your intestines to help with digestion. So if the medicine is going through your digestive tract and in your intestines before it does all its other stuff, then those guys are on the front line and they get the brunt of that and can die off faster than they can be replenished. And so not having that digestive balance with those friendly bacteria in your intestines can lead to diarrhea on the other side. More of a problem with little kids than adults. Yes and no. I know tons of adults that they'll take 2 doses of antibiotic and they end up with diarrhea because they have antibiotic associated diarrhea, which is the fun textbook term for it. But yes, little kids definitely can be sensitive to that. And they do make little kid probiotics, which is the best way and cheapest way to be able to replenish those guys back in your intestines. Live culture yogurts give you live cultures of bacteria to go in your body, but sometimes the diversity of the critters in live culture yogurt it's not as diverse as what you can get in a pill, where they actually put it together and do all of the science to give you as a diverse option as possible. Because the more diverse your flora is in your intestines, then the better chance you have for some of them surviving if other ones don't make it. So that's an easy way to avoid or help recover faster from diarrhea associated with antibiotics. Another type of medication that can cause diarrhea works on your cholesterol. Now, some medications, like the statins, go in your body. They do all this trick to the cholesterol mechanism in your liver and stop your cholesterol making by that way. Other ones go into your intestines as they're there. You usually take them with meals, because as they're there, the fat in your meal, they start sucking it up and vacuuming it up and packing it up. So your body can't actually absorb the fat for it to be fed into the cholesterol production factory. But because you end up with all of that fat trapped in your intestines with this medication, fat being an oil, something oily, and it doesn't dissolve in water, ends up making your intestines more slippery, so thus things slip out of your intestines faster, which can lead to diarrhea. You kind of have to deal, if you're going to take that type of medication, that's just something you're going to have to deal with. Or if you just cut a lot of fats out of your diet, then there won't be a lot of fats for that medication to have to trap up. If you eat a heavy fat meal, then that medication is going to have a lot of fat to work on, and that's going to be a lot more stuff to have to be exited out the back end. Whereas if you eat a low-fat meal, then the medicine's not going to have as much to work on, so then you don't end up with as slippery stool as you would otherwise. And then a third medication that a lot of people are on, that is the main one that we usually have to educate people and say, if you can just make it over the hump, this medicine's going to do you more good than harm, and that's metformin, which is another medication for type 2 diabetes. Just one of the side effects, as it's going through the intestines and breaking down, can cause diarrhea. But it's usually short-lived, and I say short-lived, a month of diarrhea sounds like a really long time, but when it comes to this, may be a medication that you have to take for the rest of your life. Dealing with that for that first month to be able to control the type 2 diabetes on the other side is usually negligible. So if you can get over that hump with that medication side effect, it's usually short-lived, and then the medicine has all of the benefits on the backside once you get over that. For anything that causes diarrhea, whether it's dietary changes or medication or just body changes with aging and everything, bulking fiber are a good option, a healthy option that doesn't change the chemistry or anything of what's going on in your intestines the way Imodium does. And so bulking fiber like Metamucil, Benefiber, the powdery stuff you mix in liquid and take are bulking fibers, which are insoluble, so they don't soak into your body and flow throughout your veins and do all of that kind of stuff, but they stay directly in your intestines and work on controlling that water absorption balance to help get more water out of your stool so it's firmer. After all the acid and all of that stuff goes through your stomach and your small intestines to absorb as much nutrients from the food that you eat as possible, the bottom end and the large intestine's goal is to just absorb water, to reclaim as much of the water from what is passing through, reclaiming that back into your body as best as it can. The bulking fiber helps make sure that all of the stuff flowing through the large intestines is being packed together and made solid and condensed as possibly can. The flip side of that, if the seesaw tips to the other side, it ends up being constipation, because you've absorbed too much water. But keeping that balance is key. Again, some people will come to my pharmacy and say, I'm allergic to that medication because it makes me nauseous, or I'm allergic to that medication because it gives me diarrhea. And really and truly, in our medical textbooks, that's not an allergy. It's just an intolerance. And sometimes the intolerance means you don't need to take that anymore, because I'm never going to ask you to tolerate something that you just think is terrible. But sometimes having the education of knowing if this intolerance is going to be short-lived, and if I can get over the hump, I'm going to reap all these benefits from the medication I have to take, then that helps your psyche to know that, like, this medicine isn't making me worse. It's actually going to make me better if I can get past this wall. Thanks for listening to the Pharmacist Answers podcast. The pharmacy is now closed. You can post your questions and comments on our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/pharmanswerspod. Or you can email the show at pharmacistanswershere@gmail.com. You can tweet me or message me on Twitter @SinHendrix. You can find the show notes at pharmacistanswershere.wordpress.com. Pharmacist Answers broadcasts live on Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday at 9:02 a.m. Eastern Time on the Periscope app. You can follow me @SinHendrix or view in your web browser at periscope.tv/SinHendrix. See you next time on the Pharmacist Answers podcast.